Hey everyone, my name is Carl Rausch, and today I'll be discussing the U.S. military supply chain transformation, specifically how the failures that I witnessed firsthand in Iraq all the way back in 2003 led to one of the largest and most complex logistics overhauls in the history of ever. The transformation turned a very reactive, paper-based, antiquated system into the most modern, predictive, and data-driven global supply chain. I, I don't think it's real if you look at it. So, all the way back forever ago, when I first arrived in Iraq in 2003, we could barely get food or water, let alone the more critical parts like certain ammunitions or the track sections for the armored vehicles, right? The supply convoys were very irregular. Communication was very poor, and no one at the level had any visibility or any clue when or where supplies were going to come the next time. It was way beyond inefficiency, and it had turned into just survival. Those very early days or months, it lasted almost my whole first year. Very, very badly in the first 6 months, and then improvement, but still not a reliable improvement. That exposed massive, massive cracks in the US logistics system. Each military branch was operating independently, relying on outdated methods that just were not adapted to modern warfare. So the Department of Defense very quickly realized that our supply chain was completely fragmented, based purely on reactivity, and it was completely blind. Each service, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, like Coast Guard, but we don't count Coast Guard so much. They had their own logistics system. The orders were processed manually, often through paper spreadsheets, and at my level, at the ground level, we had to call our resupply in using radio calls. There was no unified visibility of inventory or movement of that inventory. And as we all saw being televised on the nightly news, the logistics convoys became very predictable, very easy targets. That Iraq experience showed that we could win every firefight, but still lose operationally because of broken logistics. So, in response, the Department of Defense and the Defense Logistics Agency, DLA, began a complete overhaul of the military logistics system. The goals were very clear. They needed to build a joint, integrated supply chain across all the branches. So, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and we even let the Coast Guard in. Now we have Space Force and everything else that we've built out all use the same supply chain system. That we also needed to gain real-time visibility of inventory, shipment data, and shipment supply lines, and then introduce predictive analytics to anticipate needs before shortages occur. And we also needed to increase resilience in contested or disrupted environments. So this became the foundation of the Joint Logistics Enterprise, or JLINT, because the military and the federal government needs to make an acronym of everything. So the global logistics backbone for the military, JLINT, Joint Logistics Enterprise. So transformation happened in several key areas. First, enterprise resource planning systems like the GCSS Army, the LMP, and the Navy's ERP replaced hundreds of isolated databases. So when I say isolated databases, think of let's think of an office, or let's use McDonald's. So if we go every McDonald's in the country, each McDonald's would have had its own isolated supply database, meaning the next McDonald's over had no idea what it needed. And even inside of that McDonald's, the fry section had a different supply database than the hamburger section, than the ice cream section. And none of those talked. So nobody had any idea what was going on anywhere. That's what we replaced with these new GCSS Army, LMP, and Navy ERP systems. Second, the inventory and network optimization had to ensure supplies were positioned where they'd be needed and not just stored where they'd always been. Third, digital modernization to introduce tools like IoT, Internet of Things sensors, blockchain pilots, and 3D printing for field repairs. That was a very big deal because military contractors like these companies, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, etc., held primacy over replacing parts on vehicles. So if these contract suppliers couldn't keep up, then the military wasn't allowed to fix those parts on their own. That was a big change that came from this, and it was a good change. And then finally, risk management became centralized. Smarter routing of supplies and resources, convoy automation, and redundancy in supply lines. It made logistics faster and safer for everybody. This is a big one. Coffee. The military supply chain transformation. It unfolded over three distinct phases, right? So phase one, 2003 to 2010, the dark years. That was about survival and trying to modernize things. Systems like the GCSS and LMP that I mentioned before were initially deployed, and logistics commands began to unify across all the branches. I got to experience that as well. Iraq, Philippines, Afghanistan, and it was still busted. Very, very busted. Sometimes you had everything you needed, sometimes you didn't get anything for months. So, phase two of that, 2011 ish to 2020, focused on full digital modernization. Started integrating AI tools, blockchain, those types of things, predictive maintenance, and integrating private sector best practices. We really brought in talent and expertise from places like Apple, places like Microsoft, um, to fill these gaps of knowledge that we just didn't have in the military. Phase three, 2021 to now, emphasizes really heavy on machine learning and machine learning driven sustainment. So we like fancy words in the government, right? So data fusion, Just means integrating data, sharing data, fusing data together from different places across different commands, and using the digital twin concept for global logistics simulation. Together, these three big distinct phases really built the world's largest coordinated logistics network. So the outcomes have been really transformational. Centralized data systems now provide real-time logistics and real-time visibility from the Pentagon all the way to the front line. Predictive algorithms are reducing waste and anticipating shortages. And generally speaking, logistics response times have been cut 30 to 50%, which could be years. So, new tools, that's not new, but new and generally adopted as being new, such as additive manufacturing, 3D printing, now really allows for critical parts to be produced or 3D printed near the actual place that we need them. So the result is turning into a system that saves money, saves time, and most importantly, saves lives while making global sustainment extremely precise. So, in conclusion, really, if we think all the way back to 2003, 18-year-old Carl in Iraq, when just getting a new case of MREs, the military's meals in a plastic bag, getting a new case of bottled water felt like a pure miracle. It's really, really incredible how far in a relatively short amount of time the US military has come forward. The same organization that struggled with basic resupply now runs one of the largest global data driven predictive logistics networks in the world. And that network can forecast demand weeks in advance globally. So I think the lesson's pretty clear on this that even in the military, all the money and technology alone doesn't solve the problem. The true transformation of organizations, especially when it comes to logistics and supply chains, will come from aligning the strategy, the process, and the people. Exactly the same foundation that any world class supply chain is defined by. Thank you.